Just a quick little proviso that while we are cheerfully calling all vegans, the opinions and beliefs expressed by them do not always reflect our own.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Calling All Vegans show. I'm your host, Sue Spar, and once again, Vish, our ambassador of anti-speciesism, who lives here at Wishbone Animal Rights Lab, will be sitting in as co-host. So we've all watched that cliche film where a guy meets a girl who turns his world upside down. But for our next guest, it wasn't just a movie. And that girl who came into his life also flipped the views of millions of people around the planet about pigs, including his own. He became an activist standing up for both animals and humans alike. He's a self-described talker, and I always tend to go over time with my interviews, so we'll probably see a vein throbbing in Alex Temple pretty soon. So please welcome Steve Jenkins, one of the daddies of Esther the Wonder Pig, to the Calling All Vegan show, and Phil.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good boy.
Welcome, good boy. He's admiring himself in the mirror right now.
He is.
Gazing lovingly.
Hey, he's so handsome. Good boy.
You know, when a dog shows up or food shows up, I mean, it's kind of like dueling banjos. Like
Nothing makes you feel unimportant,
yeah,
like
exactly.
a dog or good food.
You're invisible when that happens. So I doubt there's anyone in this room who doesn't know who Esther is. And it's so upsetting to think what life could have been like for her, knowing the horrors and indignities that a commercial pig has to suffer. Instead, she was instrumental in her charming way in casting light into the dark shadows of the animal agricultural industry, and was responsible for turning countless people vegan, vegetarian, or at least bacon-free through the social media. What was your strategy or approach in achieving this?
Well, I mean, I was one of those people, had you met me before Esther came into my life, that you know, never in a million years did I ever expect I would become a vegan, let alone an activist. And always considered myself to be an animal lover. Make yourself at home, big boy.
That's
always considered myself an animal lover, but I had, that wall built that so many people do have. That on one hand you think yourself an animal lover and want the best for them, but at the same hand don't think twice, right, about picking up a package of bacon or ordering a burger or whatever it might be. And it was getting to know her. It was seeing her with the dogs in the house and becoming part of the family, and it really leveled the playing field in my mind, right? I didn't see her as anything different at that point. She was the same as the dog, same as the cats, part of the family, had all of that personality and character, and made me laugh and made me smile and did all these wonderful things that I never expected from a pig. And so the mindset was, if getting to know her, which is ultimately all that happened, getting to know her made me want to know more about where she came from, which is what kind of opened the door and got the wheels moving for me. And so that's what we're trying to replicate. It wasn't about trying to make anybody anything in particular. It was about getting them to know her, and to see her for what she was rather than what we thought she was, or those misconceptions that we all have about pigs. So that was the key thing for me, was making her relatable, highlighting her personality, and making people fall in love with that rather than, falling in love with the idea of becoming vegan necessarily. Right. It was a matter of, well, I love this pig so much, and now when I pick up bacon, I see Esther. When I think of pork chops, I think of Esther. When I, and that in itself is a really powerful thing, and from there, that's kind of the first seed planted, and we'll never touch bacon again, and we would try to gently, put people over towards, we called it Esther's Kitchen, and everything was Esther approved, and, very cognizant of the type of people that we were trying to reach, potentially still being a little bit sensitive to the thought that we were trying to change anything about them, right? So it was a very delicate approach.
Tell me what to do.
Exactly, exactly. It felt like there were a lot of organizations that were doing a lot of different approaches, and there are needs for all of them. Our approach was a little bit different in trying to get through to a little bit of a different audience, the audience that I thought that was like myself, that had done such a good job of ignoring all of these other methods of activism, you know what I mean, and trying to come at it from a totally different approach. So
Good. Now, I had the pleasure of sharing my home with a pig, Snoot, and a chicken, Chicka, although Snooty has been living his best life for the last 12 years with Susan Morris
oh
at
yes, of course,
Snooters.
yeah, absolutely.
So compared to others of their species, Snoot, Esther, Chicka, and then your little house turkey, Cornelius, who he passed away
Yes,
as well,
yes.
they were all very lucky, boys and girls. So to ensure that other farmed animals can be equally as fortunate, you've launched a project aimed at making a lasting and meaningful difference for animal sanctuaries and rescue organizations on a global scale.
Yes.
I think it's a really beautiful way, actually, to honor Esther and Cornelius.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, it's an ambitious plan, but in a good way. In a good way. You just can't sit easy, can you?
It's the Esther thing, I guess. I don't
and-
know. Everything she did was larger than life,
That's right.
right?
Yeah, that bar got set way too high. Now, you've definitely proven yourself and gained a lot of street cred from your success raising funds to purchase a property and then, of course, operating same. Not to mention your massive online following. So, can you please give us an overview of the Operation Angels
Yeah,
initiative?
absolutely. So Operation Angels started from just a really small idea, right? And the initial plan was that we were going to kind of travel around and visit other sanctuaries and do work days, right? I knew that there were a lot of sanctuaries that were struggling to attract volunteers, and funding is an issue, I think, across the board, right? And so that's how it started. And the more into it I got, the more it became obvious that there was a much bigger problem, than just needing volunteers to go for a work day once a week, or
Yeah.
the request to help with fundraisers. It felt like every single week I was sharing a fundraiser for a different sanctuary and it was constantly hands out, for money. And
I know, and people hate having to do that all the time.
and it's exhausting. It's exhausting as a fundraiser, right?
Yeah.
It's exhausting as the donors and the people that are supporting these
Yeah.
organizations to forever, have your hands out asking
Yeah.
for more money, and they have no choice. Do you know what I mean? It's not that you can run a sanctuary without having your hands out for money all the time.
Yeah.
You have to. It costs a fortune to run a sanctuary.
Yeah.
The problem is that like I said, the scale of the project was so much bigger than what I had initially anticipated. I mean, I was very, very fortunate to live, the last 10 to 12 years, and I keep calling it the Esther bubble, and Esther's little social media bubble and the sanctuary's little bubble that we had created there. And it was kind of like, it was like our own little world, and I had blinders on to everything else. We were so focused on what we were doing that I wasn't paying attention to everything else. And the minute I left that bubble and kind of was able to take a breath, and get out of that bubble, and you see how bad things are in other places, it was incredibly eye-opening, but it was also incredibly upsetting. It was incredibly upsetting to think of these people that are giving everything that they have, physically, financially, emotionally, and still going to bed at night wondering how they're going to pay an emergency vet bill, or wondering how they're going to fill their hayloft.
I had my own small sanctuary for about 15 years, so
it's
I
awful.
get it. Yeah.
It's awful. And at the same time, I found out that he was actually going to be moving to a different property, which meant that Esther's farm was either going to be sold, or something else would happen to it. And so that became then part of the motivation. Was
It doesn't bear thinking about, does it?
No,
It's
exactly,
just...
right? I'm like, well, I'm not going to let that happen.
Yeah.
And so what can I do that would save this farm, that will still allow us to help other sanctuaries? I don't feel like there was a need for me to start another sanctuary. I feel like that would have been a big mistake. There are enough already. There are enough, and as we know, we just said, they're all struggling for money. The last that I want to do is become another one of those. And so we switched gears, and the idea being then that we would save the farm and the legacy of the farm and what it represents, but turn it into a revenue generating property, make it an agritourism business, which I know a lot of people in the vegan community tilt their head sideways when you mention fundraising and business, and it becomes a bit of a confusing thing, a confusing approach, but it's an industry that's huge. Many billions of dollars are being spent a year on agritourism businesses. The property is in a location that I think would allow us to attract the right kind of audience that we want, not only from the Esther community and the vegan community, but from the general public at large, which is what I find the most interesting part, because we can attract the general public at large. All of the proceeds from the business will be donated to sanctuaries and rescues, but we're basically capturing, to me anyway, we're capturing what I see as donations from the general public that may never otherwise contribute to this cause.
That's right.
And contribute to sanctuaries and rescues.
Yeah.
And so it's a way to take part of the market that is already there, that already exists. People are already spending this money on these experiences, and just divert it where we want it.
I think it's
You
a
know,
great idea.
and so yeah, it was a bit of a backwards way to come to
Well, however,
where we
however
are.
you can get money for these
That's the
sanctuaries,
thing, right?
it doesn't matter how you get there.
Exactly,
It's,
right?
yeah.
Exactly. And it quite literally is, I think it's something like a $30 billion industry, the
Ooh, nice to
agritourism
have a
industry. You
little
know, it's a lot of
taste of
money
that, huh?
that
Yeah.
people are spending on stuff, and you know, to have guest accommodations on the farm, you know, to have special events, to be able to hold festivals on the property. You know, I'll have my own animals. I'm sure I'm not the type to not.
Yeah. What do
So
you
they'll
think
be
of that,
there as
Phil?
well. But yeah, the property's primary focus will be to generate revenue, and for all of that revenue to then be turned back to sanctuaries and rescues that you know really need it.
That's awesome.
So-
And I mean, I looked through your, like the numbers and everything. Obviously, a lot of hours went into the more nitty gritty details.
Yeah.
I won't say dry.
Yeah,
I won't say they were dry.
Real exciting read,
Yeah.
isn't it?
But I was happy to read that there's a big emphasis on sustainability and environmental impact. Could you just talk about that a little
Absolutely.
bit?
Well, we're again, it's one of those things that I feel like we don't talk about as much as we could, and I feel like the farm, in its location, we're on the Niagara Escarpment and kind of a sensitive ecological area
Yeah.
anyway. That it's a really good opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about it, and of course, it all relates back to you know the primary mission, right, of being kinder to animals and being kinder to ourselves and to people, right? Because you know, as we know, the animal agriculture industry is having a huge impact on our environment, and it's not something we talk about a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for us to connect the dots. You know, in a project like this at Operation Angels, right? We can naturalize a property that was used to be a dairy farm, and then it was a sanctuary, and we're going to still have animals there, like I said, but we will be naturalizing some of those pasture spaces that were previously used for grazing animals, you know, and returning them back to nature and kind
That's
of
good.
taking
So you're
advantage
helping
of the
wild animals in the
100%.
process as
Yeah,
well.
100%. And in a again, sometimes it gets people's head a bit sideways when you're talking about from an advocacy standpoint. It's also a draw for people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's going to make people want to come to the property because they want to see it and pay money to take pictures in the lavender field or take pictures in a wildflower meadow. And so not only is it benefiting the environment, but it's benefiting the business itself, which is of course in turn benefiting the sanctuaries and the organizations we're aiming to protect. So there's always a method to the madness, even though it seems a little bit,
And the
how does
Mad
this
Hatter,
relate to this
yeah.
and how does this relate to this? I promise it does. But that's the whole idea, right? We want to create something that will draw people in, not only from our community, but that will draw in the general public. How are we going to do that? By making it beautiful, making it different, making it pretty, and doing all of these things that are not the typical priorities for a sanctuary, and rightfully so. But
Well,
we're
the
going to
things
use
that
that to our
the
advantage.
general population appreciates. And, you know,
Exactly.
people, we were saying in our last segment that we've lost our connection to the
Yeah.
natural world and we're really in conflict with it. So this,
Yep.
people, I think we are all craving to get back to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's an opportunity to come and stay in the country, stay in a beautiful location, still close to the city. People can commute to it. We will have a lot of educational programs and stuff going on, as we just talked about the naturalization areas, the stuff that's going on, ecological stuff that's happening on the property elsewhere. And also an opportunity to use, you know, the barn and the sanctuary itself for an educational facility for sanctuaries and for rescue organizations, and
That's
you know,
amazing.
really trying to make it a home base for this entire project, you know,
Wow.
that started out as calling it Esther's Angels was kind of the initial name for the whole thing, right? For the
Yeah.
groups that were going, we're still traveling around and doing work days at sanctuaries, looking to build a database of skilled volunteers, you know, I mean, for accountants, vets, you know, board governance, all of these things, right? People start a sanctuary with the best of intentions,
Yeah.
right? But there is so much more
Well,
to
the
it.
work actually just, you get so
You get so
buried
sucked
in that. Yeah.
You do, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of areas there that we're able to assist sanctuaries, not only just financially, but on an organizational level. And we've been really blessed to have the network that we have with social media, with the social media pages, that we are able to actually get these volunteers in different areas. You know, we've got people in the UK, we've got people in the States, people in Canada, people in Australia that all want to be part of something. You know, and one of the other things that I always noticed and I always thought was a little bit strange but understandable to a degree is that there's very little sense of community in the sanctuary organizations itself, right? It's not very many sanctuaries that are working or collaborating with or partnering with or, you know what I mean? Working together, right?
They're so, for one thing, I guess they're so busy. And secondly, people get little sharp teeth when it comes to
100%.
trying to getting money. Like it's
100%,
all
right?
everyone
I
fighting
don't
for
want to
that
talk to
same-
you about what I'm doing because your donor might come and talk to you or come and talk to me.
Yeah.
And but you know what I mean? It's very guarded and everybody's very, and again, I get it to a certain degree, but I also feel like we're a lot stronger when we're working together.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? If we were a little bit more collaborative, and I feel like there's ways that sanctuaries could be supporting each other a little bit better, and that's kind of what I'm hoping the Esther's Angels project will do, is kind of create a little bit more of a community among the sanctuaries that choose to be part of it or want to be part of it, or and will allow us to, in turn, support financially to direct people there when it comes to volunteers and all that sort of stuff, and do something that will actually make a difference and put money into a cause that the vast majority of us sanctuary founders or advocates or whatever are having to take money from, right?
Yeah.
Most of us are fundraising constantly, and
Yeah.
and I want to create something that does the opposite.
You're like this
basically.
one-stop shop or something.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
No,
What starts as one idea, right? That's the thing. It literally
Exactly.
started as we want to travel around with work days. We're like, we're going to be so helpful. We're going to go
Yeah.
around and do these work days, and work days, it turns out, are just scratching the surface. It's
Yeah.
just the very least that we can
It takes
do,
a long
you
time
know?
to muck out a stall.
Oh my
so.
God, it does. Right? It really, really does. So, I know it's helpful, but I know that
Yeah.
we can do more.
Oh, exactly.
And yeah, it all just kind of came down together. The farm becoming available and everything else, it all just kind of happened. It's same as Esther, though. She came in, well, we're going to run with it. What's next?
Yeah.
That's how we ended up with where we were. And so that's what's happening now.
Well, and I'm thinking, as another draw, you could have Phil walking around in a
little
Speedo or
little
something.
kissing booth
Yeah.
with Phil. Hey, handsome
Yeah,
boy.
That's right.
Yeah, you're very busy, man. Aren't
And
ya?
you have all
Very
these.
busy.
Oh yeah. Are you okay, Phil? You have a lot of great perks for every tax bracket too, from $10 right up to $1 million. I haven't seen anyone claiming that last
Honestly,
one yet.
right?
We're
You have to switch
fighting
it up
over
a
it
little.
in here, yeah. And the campaign ends July 31st.
Yes, we've got another month to go, so we're about halfway through.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, what was the backup plan in that unlikely event?
Many
that you
backup
don't
plans.
raise
Okay,
that
so I've got a
required
couple.
funds. Yeah. Yeah.
Couple
Am I
plans.
going over, Alex? No.
So, one, the plan, the goal that we have set with the fundraiser now would allow us to proceed without the use of traditional banks, right? Which would mean that I'm able to buy out the farm entirely. I would still have
Yeah.
my own little small mortgage, but that's
Yeah.
already in place. That doesn't
Yeah.
need anything. If we have to, we will explore having to get lending. If I have to do that, whether it be via the bank or through private lenders. There are also some other, family favors that I might be able
Call
to
them
pull
in.
if I need to.
Call them
Who's
in.
willing to sell their house and
Yeah.
move to the farm,
Yeah.
So yeah, I will explore every option that I possibly have. Now, if the absolute worst case happens and we are not able to close on or take possession of the farm, then we've got a few options. Either A, we start returning donor dollars to people.
Yeah.
We will take that funds and we will apply it to purchasing another property that will allow us to do the same thing. Although
Yeah.
I have to admit, it concerns me because part of the allure of the Campbellville property is the location, the history. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that was part of what really motivated it.
Well, that's
So
baked into the whole
it
thing.
is, yeah. So I'm not as in love with the idea of just buying another property.
But you're not going to pull a
I'm not
big
going to rule it out, or
poof,
no.
Yeah.
Or we're going to carry on doing what we're doing without the property as a home base, and that money will be used and donated to other sanctuaries, donated to organizations. It'll be something that we'll have to decide and work with, the contributors to the campaign to decide.
Yeah.
I laid that out at the beginning. Here's our worst case scenario.
Yeah. No, that's good. Let them know right up front.
Got to, right? You've got to. And I feel like that's one of the things that always made Esther was the openness and transparency, right? With what we did and what we were doing and where the money was going and what we would use it for.
Yeah.
To me, it's not a donation. To me, it's an investment in the program and in the cause itself, right? Even the money that is used to purchase the farm will be used as equity that will belong to the organization. So it's not my equity, it will belong to them. If I had to sell the farm 10 years from now, that $1 million investment will have appreciated and it will be returned, and donated to sanctuaries and organizations. So to me, I see it as an investment in a bigger project and plan, rather than here's $10 that I'm never going to see again. You know what I mean? It's that $10 is going to be parked somewhere as an investment, appreciating in value, and will be used for the rest of that farm's life to, do the work that we're doing. So that's how I am seeing it. That's how I'm rationalizing it in my mind when I'm like, I'm going to actually do this, which was part of a problem in itself, right? Sanctuaries need money here. Let me go and raise a whole ton of money so that I can turn around then and raise money
Yeah.
person. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
a bit of a circular
Yeah.
approach, right? But it was, again, I can ask for money every day for all of these organizations, or I can do one big, huge campaign and then ideally never have to ask for money.
You're
again.
kind of Canada Helps, you
That's
know,
kind
that,
of the, yeah.
one big
Do it
clearinghouse.
once
Yeah.
and get it over with,
Oh,
right? And
beautiful.
position ourselves in such a way that for decades to come, that we can return that money many times over to these organizations.
Your dad's pretty smart.
That's the
Phil.
goal, right, Phil?
Daddy's
It was
smart.
his idea. I just had to write it down.
Yeah. So aside from donating, obviously, how else can people support? the
Absolutely.
initiative?
So social media is a crazy thing, right? And there is power in numbers. There's always been power in numbers in what we do with Esther the Wonder Pig. And so sharing, engaging with those posts, liking those posts, sharing them, encouraging friends and family to do the same, increases the reach of the campaign itself, which just makes it more visible and, of course, increases the likelihood of getting contributions. So aside from financial contributions, sharing and engaging in the content is the best possible thing that people can do. And it is invaluable. I cannot understate how important it is that people are sharing and engaging
We're
in the content.
all wanting those little algorithms to
Exactly,
work in our
right?
favor.
Well, and nobody
They're
knows how they work either.
No, I
You know
know.
what I mean? I've spent the last decade on
Yeah.
Facebook and I still haven't got a clue, right? You think you're getting it figured out and then they change it or they change weird settings.
They
do
toy with
something.
us.
They do. They're messing with us intentionally.
We'll link everyone to the Facebook fundraising page and your website and social media. But could you please just itemize right now what those are?
Absolutely. So they can find my pages on Facebook and Instagram at Steve Jenkins on Facebook or Hey Pig Daddy on Instagram.
Hey, Pig Daddy.
Right, yeah. And the fundraising campaign you'll find on Indiegogo.com. Just search Operation Angels on Indiegogo and it'll pop right up for you.
Great. So last question.
Sure.
If sweet Esther was standing here before you right now, what would you want to say to her?
Oh, bless her. Lot of things.
Yeah.
Just that I'm going to keep going. I feel like there was a lot that we hadn't done yet,
Yeah.
and I feel, like I said, since my head came out of the bubble, the Esther bubble, I don't even know what the right word is. I feel like we missed the boat a little bit, in that there were things that we could have done and could have done a little bit differently that would have been more helpful, rather than getting so focused, on what we were doing. Like I said, as a sanctuary founder, you get so stuck in your work that you don't realize the people behind you that are barely keeping their head above water. And I feel bad for that. So
That's very sweet.
I'm going to try to fix it. So I want her to know Daddy's working on it.
Oh.
Daddy's trying his best.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I've wanted to sit down with you for years and years, and I have my regrets too, because I would have loved to have met her and Corno.
Special girl, that's for sure.
So anyway, thank you so much.
I
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Poor Phil.